So I want to get into, because obviously there was coverage of New York bending over backwards, but if Amazon were to go into New York, it would have basically bulldozed full neighborhoods to create the buildings and the infrastructure needed. So can you kind of talk about, as an activist here, what are some of the things Amazon is doing to basically buy off the politicians, intimidate the activists? I've read, I can't verify it, but I've read that they basically pay people to sign petitions in their favor against things like this tax. So what are the things that on the local level here Amazon is doing? Because I think when you expand it nationally, Amazon, change Amazon's name to General Motors, changed Amazon's name to Foxconn in Wisconsin, which was Trump's BS thing that was going to bring 13,000 jobs, which now they're saying, oh, we're not actually going to make these special TV glass things. So what kind of heavy-handed stuff is Amazon doing here? Because when I watch MSNBC or I read the New York Times, it's like Jeff Bezos, Washington Post, which Amazon owns, it's like this guy is, philanthropist of the year. Aside from his recent troubles in his personal life, they enshrine him as this wonderful, prince.
I mean, when you see Amazon donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to hyper-local campaigns, that's a clear sign that I'll say this. I think one thing everyone has realized is the importance of hyper-local elections. And I think it's really easy to focus on the national and global implications of everything that's going on. And it's important, of course. What Trump is doing every day is terrible. But I think there's a reason why hyper-local city council races are now being funded by corporate money. Like, what's going on? Like, since when do these really powerful global elites care about city council candidates? And it's because everyone has this consensus now, is like, to protect wealth or to redistribute wealth, you need to do it hyper-locally. That's where you protect your taxes. That's where you protect policies where you prevent rezoning of neighborhoods, and that's where you really, if you don't control the city council in your neighborhoods, you're gonna have to find another place. And that's why Amazon was threatening, if Jenny Durkan, our current mayor, who received hundreds of thousands of dollars from Amazon and corporations like that, didn't win, they were threatening to leave. They're threatening to leave Seattle if the head tax was passed and city council, again, a battle of principle, and if 5 of the 9 city council members decided to vote for the head tax, it wouldn't have made a huge dent on Amazon or the homelessness crisis, but it would have shown Amazon this city council is not on our side anymore.
Right.
And we're fucked moving forward if we want to protect as much of our wealth as possible. And the city council folded. Obviously, the mayor has been bought by Amazon. You can look at her donations records. And so that's how it played out. And so Amazon's like, okay, cool, like, we'll stay back. Obviously, I'm sure we pissed them off because we sent a couple of the 4 who voted against Amazon.
And Frank, apparently, I mean, I don't want to blow up your spot, so tell me to buzz off, but apparently Amazon buys off media too, because they went after you for writing a piece for The Atlantic.
Yeah, they weren't totally happy with that. I don't know. Obviously, independent journalism is not the easiest to do when you have Jeff Bezos buying off papers like the Washington Post.
Who, by the way, has a $600 million contract with the CIA, and now I believe $1 billion contract with the Pentagon. Sorry.
Yeah, and this is a very touchy subject, but you think that if you're at least going to do that, you're going to protect your own writers on the ground when their lives are being threatened. But it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Or that's not really his interest on why he bought a paper like that. You have a place like Seattle where we're losing publications left and right because of funding. And really the only paper alive right now is the Seattle Times. And we all know what happens when there's a monopoly happening in media. When the Seattle Times is the only publication releasing any content that people are reading, and they also become bought off, what happens then? Then you have people who are, a couple months ago, some activists, a lot of who came from the DSA here, the local chapter, and the Seattle People's Party, we went to this encampment in Ravenna, and we were resisting a sweep that was happening to this encampment. It would have been their fourth encampment fourth homeless sweep in 6 months.
When you say sweep, basically folding.
Yeah, basically the city coming in, and I'm generalizing, but what they do is they first come in with social workers. They ask the homeless individuals they basically tell them what their options are, which is not much. They say, hey, here are these shelters that are open. By the way, we can't fully tell you if there's available beds. Mm-hmm. We can't fully tell you if whatever criminal history you have or drug addiction problem you may be suffering with. We're not sure if those things will prevent you from going into these shelters, but we're telling you that you can't be here anymore.
And I just want to set the scene a little more. I mean, obviously it's different than like homeless people sleeping outside Penn Station in like 20 degrees, but like there's severe rainy seasons in Seattle.
Yeah.
It's not warm here during the winter,
no.
So you have people sleeping out in a lot of severe weather and bad weather, and a lot of these people are kids and teenagers.
Yeah, I mean,
or elderly people.
I mean, with hundreds of people dying on the street in Seattle, like there's an obvious problem in terms of the ability to survive. You know, and when I go into these encampments and I hear an individual tell me, this is the 6th time I'm being forcibly removed from my shelter, which, believe it or not, there are protocols on like when you're allowed to do a homeless sweep. Couple of are like, as long as you're out of sight, out of mind, as long as you're not threatening any other individual, any other person who may have a house near there, as long as you're not endangering yourself, as long as there's not excess of trash and litter. These individuals in these encampments, they know the rules. They know the rules they have to follow. And many times when I go to these encampments, the first thing they tell me is, why are they sweeping us again? We're following all the rules.
Right.
We're picking up all of our trash. We have nowhere else to go. All of our stuff is here. The last time they came here, they threw away all my stuff in the garbage. Mm-hmm. And so every time a sweep happens, it becomes even harder for these people to find restorative ways to go back into the community. Mm-hmm. It just pushes them 5 steps back or more every time. And so, you know, after the social workers come, the police then come, the bulldozers come, and essentially just like bulldoze all of it away. Mm-hmm. And a sweep, I think you guys are talking to some people later today. Mm-hmm. Their encampment's getting swept on Monday. Mm-hmm. It's a regular occurrence in our city. We're not building affordable housing. We're not taxing the rich.
They're basically sweeping them like the trash.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we've coined the term sweep. I mean, that's definitely not what elected officials use. They say homeless encampment removals or something, but they're sweeping people like they're trash. Mm-hmm. And with over 12,000 homeless people in our city, you can only do that so much.
So let me give you the devil's advocate argument. And I hate to blow up his spot, but from my dear older brother, who works in finance, good guy. I mean, he's not like a crazy, Republican, but he thinks Amazon is, just great corporate citizens, and that, everyone's crazy in New York. They would have brought 25,000 jobs, and sure, these kinds of corporations, sometimes people are negatively affected, but there's more people that benefit from these high-paying jobs. You have more tax revenue coming in because more people are getting jobs. So he's basically talking about what would have happened in New York. I guess he's talking about all the people that are employed by Amazon in Seattle and Washington State, all the domino effect to businesses in the community that make more revenue. The domino effect from Amazon. So, but people like him, and I'm not just talking about him, don't actually live it. They don't see the homeless. So, what's the argument in favor of someone like
if Amazon was coming in and providing 25,000 jobs and keeping local talent here, then we can have that conversation. Those jobs aren't going to people who are from Seattle, from the community. When you have a high school like Rainier Beach High School in the South End, predominantly Black and brown students, and you're seeing that high school not being renovated since the early 70s.
Yeah.
And those students aren't being molded and prepared to have these jobs, these high-paying jobs that are the only type of jobs that they are able to get if they want to stay in the city to afford the rent, then we can have that conversation. But these jobs aren't going to people in the city. And in the same way, I think New York woke up, well, they know themselves, like, these aren't the jobs that are gonna go to the people in New York. They're gonna outsource these jobs. You know,
Which is also going to drive up the prices
of
for
course,
everything.
Of course. And you have our elected officials here building strategic public transit. We're expanding our light rails to deeper parts of the city where usually communities of colors are. And you're not admitting that these jobs aren't even going to people from the community. So as soon as the plans of this new light rail is being announced, you see the housing market in those areas skyrocket because they're preparing for Amazonians who aren't from the city to be able to move there because it's going to be really easy to do a one-link light rail stop straight into Amazon headquarters. The message is very clear. These light rail stops aren't even going to be built for another 5 to 10 years. And families are already being pushed out of those neighborhoods because just the fact that these light rails are announced, realtors are jumping all over it.
Same realtors that buy off the politicians too.
Exactly. So it's a cycle, and it's, you know, we have people in our tenants union here who are actively trying to fight against realtors coming in and just buying off everything. We're trying to push mandatory housing policies in every development, but we only can push so far, you know. And I don't know, I was working for a mayoral campaign that was opposite to Jenny Durkin's campaign, and we're pushing for 25% mandatory housing for all development, and people are looking at us like we're crazy. But fast forward a year and a half later, that even seems like a low undercut. The same way we're viewing the $15 minimum wage, that's not even enough anymore.
So let me ask you, I know you're talking about things work on the local level, and I agree actually, especially on media too. Like we cover mostly local issues rather than the Trump tweets and Russia and all that. But what's the responsibility of the presidential candidates? Because you got some people pushing out like, oh, tax credits, that's our big economic plan. We're going to give tax credits. Other candidates talking about universal basic income. Bernie, obviously, I've heard him at his rallies now talking about the gentrification crisis, but obviously Medicare for all, things like that. But this isn't just that. This isn't just Seattle. This is now Portland. This is now San Francisco. This is LA, Chicago, pretty much most major American cities. And even smaller scale cities, I mean, Atlanta, you know, we could go on. People are being forced out. People native, you're even seeing kind of the ghettoization further, where you were talking about the African American school. So what is the role of, it's not going to come from the Congress, but what is the role of these presidential candidates or people running for Congress?
And I don't mean to go on a tangent here, but like,
please do.
That's Jenny Durkin, when she ran her mayoral campaign here on the hyperlocal Seattle level, was running on a message of being the best person to lead a city in a Trumpian era.
Oh boy.
She worked for Obama. Every pamphlet that she gave out was her and Barack Obama, which, by the way, Barry and I were born in the same hospital. Just wanted to mention that.
Could I see your law-informed birth certificate?
And you know, obviously, I have my mixed opinions on a lot of our neoliberal saviors.
Be careful. He thinks he's Black Jesus.
But you know what? It's still too early to critique Hillary's campaign because of where we are in Trump. You know, even like I put one HRC tweet out there, and it's like, what the fuck, like.
Oh, I don't bother. I just critique all day. But go ahead.
No, and at the end of the day, Jenny Durkin first woman mayor in Seattle since the 20s, first gay woman in Seattle history, is still being touted as a progressive leader on a national level. But you look at it hyper-locally, she couldn't be more right. And so, yeah, there's a little fear in me that in 2020, we're going to elect somebody Hillary-esque, Jenny Durkin-esque, where you think it's hard to critique and complain now. Try do it post-Trump. You know, try do it where the freshness of what Trump is doing. And again, I want to make a point that he is the incarnation of the devil, probably. But we're gonna, I mean, unless I see something else shift, where we're gonna see a Biden or somebody like figure take over office.
Well, they're really pushing the great white hope Beto O'Rourke now, if you ask me. But that's just my opinion. Who it just came out was for Social Security means testing and a lot of right wing shit. But, you know, I want to.
Well, and Cory Booker now, you know, dating a celebrity and like him needing a family, not to shit on their love, but like. You know, they're trying to they're trying to.
We love you, Rosario.
I love Rosario Dawson.
But check who he's taking money from.
Well, that's what I mean. It's like these Democrat candidates know that they need to activate the young voter base. So they're trying to do everything. They're trying to run these Disney dads. They're trying to date these celebrities, but they're not addressing the elephant in the room. They're still taking corporate money. They're still doubling down on profiting from prisons. You know, Seattle's still building a $500,000 more now youth jail that we've been battling for over 4 years.
So instead of building a $500,000 affordable housing complex.
Exactly. We still want to cage kids. We don't want to think about alternative solutions. We're still building it where in the Central District, where the black population went from 60% to single digits. And we're building that.
But it's so interesting you said that, because obviously the media and politicians and just citizens, as a human, you viscerally react to seeing these images of caged children at the border. But,
trust me,
But in a different way,
the
so-called progressives like Jenny Durkin, the priorities are not to give these people homes, education, a leg up, but to basically, like you said, put them in youth jails. So it's kind of a different form of that.
Yeah, it's, I'm trying to remember this term my friend, another activist writer here, is Brett Hamill, coined, where it's like, I can't remember the exact term, but he points out that, you know, these politicians obviously, especially hyper-locally, it's so easy to advocate for an issue like the farther away it is from your home, you know? And the hypocrisy of that is so clear. Like, we are vocal about this anti-caging of children that Trump is doing, and we're literally building the state-of-the-art youth jail here in Seattle. When we've seen LA recently, through the activists like Patrisse Cullors, push for the new men's jail there to be now used as a mental health facility and not a jail. You know, we've seen jails turn into alternative solutions for community. But Seattle, which the last time I checked was still touted as one of the most progressive cities in our country, very, very blue. Our governor of Washington is running for president.
But there's a difference between being socially progressive and economically part of the bourgeoisie.
Yeah, but to be honest, I don't even think we're either one of those anymore.
Really?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I don't know how the Jenny Durkin, and I keep bringing her up because I'm fascinated by this stuff. Like, she is clearly in our city considered right wing, and we have leftist, left-leaning voices in this city. But on a national level, Jenny is clearly left-wing. And I don't know, there are times where I believe Seattle is a snapshot into the future of politics on a national level. I think one of my mentors in Seattle has told me many times, and now we're getting a little too you're in Seattle now, so you're lucky I didn't ask you for your zodiac sign and shit like that. So you're good.
Out front tonight, chaos at the White House. President Trump's deputy chief of staff, his communications director, is
just because of their connection to President Trump. And I know you've been saying...
We learned recently that Donald Trump threatened to sue his former schools if...
Tired of hearing about Trump 24/7? Become a member at statusquo.com for only $10 a month. Click the notification. With your help, we can start the media revolution.
And before Bernie went on stage, I spoke with his supporters online here, and you really get that feeling for